does not imply a notion of distance. So why I use the word topology instead of geometry. But basically the idea is the same, and the work done here has been made by myself, but also a lot of other people and the previous speaker and the whole community, because I think that the geometrical approach or the spatial idea in music has gaining the last year a lot of interest. So the outline of my talk, I want to motivate why going beyond graphs, using mainly what is called a simplicial complex. And I want to give you some example of the use of this mathematical notion, which is an elementary notion in topology, in formalizing some musical notion. And I think that this approach, in fact, has a fundamental nature, and I want to explain what you can grasp by representing things on binary relationships in music, but also in other fields, by simplicial complex and by topology. And for my conclusion, I will give you 3 remarks. So perhaps, incidentally, I want to explain why using topology. I am a computer scientist, and in computer science, we have been deeply influenced by a logical approach. In fact, a computation is often viewed as a deduction, as a theorem proving. And this idea is rooted in the seminal work of Turing, for instance, but can be made precise by what is called the Curie-Howard isomorphism. This approach has been very useful, for example, to show that there are some problems that are not computable. But for example, it fails for the moment to have it does not give any clue to understand the complexity in programs. And so we are looking for other paradigms, and perhaps we can use topology. And in topology, the idea or metaphor is that a computation is not a deduction, but computation is moving in some space. And by using other metaphor, we usually want to achieve three things. This is an heuristic to try to solve questions we cannot solve. This also furnish new technical tools to solve old problems and new ones. And it can be also didactical because, for example, you can explain some notions that are internal to a domain by applying to the intuition to another domain. So in music, I think the spatial metaphor is coming from long times ago. And the spatial metaphor is the idea to use a spatial relationship like connectedness, having a boundary, being incident to some things, the notion of holds, dimension, to grasp relationship in another domain. And this is a way to rephrase or to present the idea of the tonets of Euler, where I don't say that Euler is thinking the things like that, but we can present what he has done in the following way. He wants to put clause, notes that have something in common, that are consonant. And putting clause here means that, in fact, it can be represented by a graph. A note is a node in the graph, and being close is being connected by an edge. And here, edges are labeled by 2 intervals that make the note having something in common together. So we can see here the object here as a graph. But why stopping as a graph? Perhaps you can go beyond. And why do we have to go beyond graphs? The idea is that we want to represent more than notes. For example, we can represent chords. So we need some additional mathematical gadget to represent that. And we want to represent more sophisticated constraints. So there is a natural generalization of the notion of graph, which is the idea of cellular complex. A graph, you can see that as an object that is built using 2 ingredients. The first ingredient is the node of the graph, and a node is an object of dimension 0. And then you connect the node by taking edges, and edges are an object of dimension 1. There is a line. This is a line. But you can go further and say, okay, now I want to connect lines using faces as surfaces, and you can connect faces by volume and so on. And here I have represented this kind of basic entities in the plane, if you want. Here is in perspective, but in fact I can define this entity in a very abstract way. A graph is defined independently of its embedding, of its representation in a plane. So I can see it combinatorially, and just note that even if I picture the entities I'm using as something in the plane in my next slide, in fact I look it in a combinatorial way. So we have the basic ingredients, the building bricks, and I assembled it. And in fact, you have several different kind of rules to assemble it. Usually, what we want to avoid is this kind of situation. Okay, when we assemble two things, they must have a building blocks, a basic building blocks as a boundary in common. Okay. So just a note. I'm speaking about topology, but you are perhaps more used with topology of set of points, the topology of open and closed set you study in class. But in fact, there is a relationship between the topology of an open and closed set and the kind of cellular complex I built here. And if I'm looking at the cellular complex only from the combinatorial point of view, there are also a relationship with the notion of lattice, of inclusion, of order relationship. Okay? So when I define some mechanism in one of these formalisms, usually I can rephrase it in another one. But in the interest of being in one framework as opposed to being in another one is that some notions are more natural in one framework than the other. So even if I can reformulate it, some formulations are more simple or more obvious or more intuitive in one framework than the other. So now I have my setting, my formal tools, and I want to show you some example of the use of this mathematical device in music. The first one is the whole interval series. So an whole interval series is to find the sequence of the 12 notes, for instance, where each note appears only once, and the intervals also between two successive elements in the sequence appears also only once. So I can formalize this situation in a topological way as the following ways. An whole interval series pass in some space, and this space, finally, I can see it as the search space of the possible sequence. So for here, I represent the note by a point, a cell of dimension 0, and an interval by the edge between these two notes. And then the search space is just the complete graph, which represents all the interval between all the 12 notes. And an whole interval series is simply a pass in this graph. So it starts by a note here, and then you have an interval, which gives you another note, and I can continue by making the edge. So here you have the one example of an whole interval series. Here I have the pass that I'm building. And here I have represented which is called a pattern. In fact, all the notions I present you are implemented in a language that make possible to deal directly with cellular complex. And this is a pattern that represents just an interval which has as border the note N0, N1, if you want. Okay. So I can continue like that. And an whole interval series is a pass, which is Hamiltonian. Hamiltonian means that I pass only once between each pass. It is not enough. I have to explain, to impose also that the edge I traverse have all a different label because I want only have once each interval. And there is a problem with this representation. The problem is that I don't have a geometric or a topological representation of the constraint that the pass must go only once to each interval. So the idea is the following. I want just to augment my search path with an explicit topological entities that represent the intervals. So for example, here I represent all the intervals that are labeled by an interval of Furth, and they pass by all the nodes. So I can represent it by a cell, and this time it is a two-dimensional cells, and I can do that for all the interval. Here there is a little technicalities. This is a well-behaved cells. This cell is not well-behaved because it has some hole, and usually a cell must be a very basic entity that is a piece of space without hole inside. But okay, there are some technicalities we can deal with very easily. We just forget it. And so now, finding a null interval series, simply finding a path in this space. The space is the complete graph plus the surfaces that represent the intervals. And just what I say is that I go from one node, I take the interval, I go to the interval classes which represent the constraint of being unique, and I go out by the same interval and to go to the less cell. And this is represented by this pattern. And we can code it directly in a computer language just to enumerate all the Hamiltonian paths, but this time the path must be Hamiltonian at the level of the point linked by the edges, which represent the nodes that are present in the path only once, but also Hamiltonian on the surfaces linked by the nodes, which represent the interval. Okay, so you can use this topological representation to enumerate all the interval series, but you can use it also to classify it because you have a topological representation, and so you have some invariants that are true on some spaces on some paths and not some other paths, and you can make classes of that. Another representation is the representation of chord complexes. And the idea is simple. We represent nodes by a point. We represent two node chords by an edge, three node chords by a triangle, and so on. Four node chords correspond to a tetrahedron, and so on. And we build spaces by assembling this kind of simplicial complex. I want to show you two kind of spaces that arise when you consider set of chords that are obtained by classical musical transformation, so the orbit of some group transformation on set of notes, and also spaces that arise from seeing all the chords that are present in some musical phrases on a musical piece. So, for example, if you take the degree of the diatonic scale, I can assemble it, and I have the cycle of fifth, and I obtain a Moebius strip, because here the two notes here must be glued with this one, but with a twist. But what we can do is, because we have a computational framework here, is that we can do it at any kind of dimension, for example, by considering the four chords. This one was obtained by hand. You built it, and just you discover that is a Moebius strip. Here, we can build the things. It's still buildable because each chord here represents a tetrahedra. And then you can figure it that what kind of phase is it. But we have a computational language, so we can build it specifically. And we build it just by using a procedure that makes the self-assembly of the chord. You put in a set, or more exactly in a multiset, all the chords that are labeled by the notes, and then we have some kind of rewriting procedure. And rewriting is like a kind of grammar, if you want, that glue together the cells that are labeled by the same notes. And then we obtain a space, and then we can decide what kind of space it is. Deciding what kind of space it is when I present you a space, it's not a very easy task. In fact, it's a very difficult one. But for low dimension, like 2 and 3, we can ask some characteristics that are enough to say the kind of space we have at hand. And for 4 knot degree here, we have, in fact, torus, but filled torus, like donuts, not the surfaces of the torus. So we can take other kind of population of initial population of chords. For example, we can take the forte class. Here I take a class given by the dihedral permutation of the intervallic structure. I self-assemble it, I obtain a complex, and then I characterize this complex. And this work was done systematically by Louis Bigot. And we have here, we can count the result, and we can characterize the result. And some of this result was already known before, but here we have a systematic procedure and a computational one to do it. So you can ask one natural question, which is, what is the relationship between the tonettes and this approach? In fact, we can show that if you consider generalized tonettes is the tonettes that are the calligraph of the note when you apply some transposition by a given set of interval. Then this tonettes, this calligraph, is in fact the one skeleton of the space you built as I show you. The one skeleton is just you take your space and you just forget all the cells that have a dimension strictly greater than 1. And we retrieve in this way some very well-known result. I find more interesting to apply this approach, in fact, to a specific piece. For example, I take some musical phrase of Chopin, and what I do is exactly the following, exactly the same things. For each chord, I have a simplex. I put the simplex together, and I glue them to obtain a space. And in fact, this space you have here is the space that is obtained by here. You just forget the first chord. All the cells in this space are triangle because all the chords here have 3 notes. And if you look precisely, all triangle has at least one neighbor with with another triangle by an edge. And why? Because if you look at it, in fact, when you go from one triangle, from one chord to the other chords, you just change one note. So when you have this object, you have forget the time. You forget completely the time, the progression in time. And if you will look what is the performance of the piece, in fact, it corresponds to a pass in this space. This pass is made by a triangle. Is like a completely folded sheet of origami, if you want, but you can unfold it and look at the pass followed by the performance. And in fact, this pass has some characteristic. It's again an Hamiltonian pass, and between one cell and the other cell, you always have two notes in common, so an edge. So perhaps you can wonder what is an Hamiltonian pass and say, okay, Hamiltonian pass is pleasant for mathematicians, but what is the musical purpose of that? I think it's more than just a mathematical gadget. Hamiltonian, you have to pass by each node of the graph. Here I extend the idea of Hamiltonianity to simplicial complex, and we pass to each node of each cell of dimension 2 of the simplex. And that's an unexpected property because I build the space by the simplex I visit, so I'm sure that I'm visiting the simplex. But being Hamiltonian means that I visit them just only once. And visiting them only once, it's a kind of constraint that composer give to us to stop the combinatorial explosion of the paths you can have in this space. In fact, it's a principle just to constrain the things, assuring a diversity because you visit every cells, but at the same time you keep some kind of minimality. So what we have seen is that I can associate a space to a musical space. This space can be characterized. For example, there are some numbers, some characteristics of a space that are called Betti numbers. And the idea is that the performance of the piece is a pass in T-space. And T-space, in fact, can be relabeled. If you forget the initial note you have done, you have a space and you can embed a space in another space. And this embedding of one space in another space can be seen in this case as a kind of relabeling, as a kind of transformation of the underlying note of the space. And for example, if you see the chorale of Bach, the 354, there is 5 ways to embed it in a sequence of another chorale. The fact that you can embed a space in another space for a composer means, in fact, that there is a kind of second-order motif, if you want. The motif is not the same by transposition, but by some kind of operation here that can be more complicated, but that is a permutation of the underlying note. And so why I present you this example is that perhaps we can characterize the style of a musical piece or a composer by the kind of second-order pattern it is using in his piece. This is a working hypothesis. I have no clue to show, to demonstrate this point, but it is part of the future work to try if we can use topological relationship to characterize the idea of the style. Okay, so that's for analyzing, but we can use also this kind of tool as a kind of generative device. So the performance of a piece is a pass in some space, so we can transform the pace, or we can transform the underlying space. So for example, here, I have some chorale of Bach, and I can represent, as has been done before, in a tonette, and what this is the chorale. Okay, that's enough. And when this piece performs, it just making some pass in this space, which is the unfolding of the tonettes, if you want. Instead of just looping the tonettes as was shown by Professor Kohn, we just unfold it by what is called a covering. So, and we can just take this object here, which is the trajectory of the piece, and just move it in the space by geometric operation. We don't have all the geometric operation we have in two-dimensional space because we are in a discrete space here represented only by a graph or by a simplicial complex of dimension 2 if I consider the edges, the surfaces. So I can do here a point reflection, and this is the result. And this transformation, in fact, is a well-known musical transformation. It's just a pitch inversion. But I can do some other things more exotic. For example, because some spaces are isomorphic. Isomorphic means just forget the label of the node, and I can see that the space have the same shape. And this is, for example, the case by the tonette generated, the Cayley graph generated by the interval of third, fourth, and fifth, and the tonette generated by the interval of second, third, and seventh. And so I take the same piece, just I play it a little bit faster. And I take the trajectory and I inject them in some place in the new tonettes. If you can. Okay. And so the idea is that in this way you have new generative device to produce some kind of new materials. For example, on some piece of Mozart. Okay, la petite musique de nuit. Oops. And I can make some, for example, some rotation, and also change in some time in the same time the space. So I make two transformations. I change the underlying space, and I make a rotation. No. Okay, for example, on a music of very different style, on jazz, a piece of Chick Corea. Okay, and we can see, oops, sorry, just the result. Okay, my point is the following. In fact, is that some of these transformations are well-known musical transformations, but some other ones are unknown for the moment. I don't know if they have a musical interest, but you see here the heuristic, the interest of having a topological approach. It is an heuristic to find some new things. So another example of the using of complex, it's a work with composer Julia Blondeau. And Julia Blondeau wants to represent explicitly the architecture of one of his pieces. So it represents his architecture. For her, there are musical domains, and these musical domains are represented by a cell, and each point of this cell is in fact an entire space, a cell that specify the musical domain, specify what happens on the dimension of the pitch, what happens on the temporal dimension, the texture, the rhythm, for example, and also what happens for the timbre. And each of these points, in fact, can expand it, can unfold it in a tetrahedra because each dimension has 4 parameters that can be described. So here you have an example of the kind of musical space, and when the piece performs, you go from one musical domain to another musical domain. So here it is the architecture of a piece called Tesla. So this work was done before writing the score. If you have access to the handwritten score, you can see the indication that follow the topology and the path in the musical domain. But in the final score, all the scaffolding disappear. This is an the internal cooking of the composer. So one question I have now is, what can I do with this kind of approach? And for that, I want to present you what is called Q analysis. In fact, what we have showed here can be seen in the context of Q analysis. So Q analysis is the study of the homology group of relation. This idea was proposed by Docker, a mathematician in the 50s, and then the idea has been developed by Atkin in the 70s. If you have a binary relationship, for example, flowers on colors, you can represent the binary relationship, which is these flowers, these colors, there is a flower with these colors by a matrix of 0 and 1, and you can associate some spaces to this matrix. In fact, two spaces. The first one is you label the point by the column, and there you put a simplex that encompasses the column if there is a 1. So a tulip is either red or yellow. So tulip is the simplex here between red and yellow. Okay. A roses, you have roses that are red, blue, white, and yellow. So a roses can be red, white, blue, and yellow. So no, there is no white. There is no yellow roses. Sorry. So there is just only a face. Okay. And in this way, you can compute all the information can go from one. For example, from one flower toward the other flower linked by their color. We can make a slight difference. Instead of considering flowers on colors, I take for the second set a set of predicates. And my first set, I call it object. For example, I have the object which are the numbers, and the second object are predicates. And I do exactly the same things. For example, the object 3 is at the same time prime, odd, and multiple of 3. But the object 4, 8, and 10 cannot be distinguished because they are they are even, and there is no property that distinguish between the numbers. So the objects are simplex, and the connectedness or the shape of the space tell you what kind of object share what kind of properties, and if they can distinguish it or not. When you have this kind of representation, in fact, it is very natural to turn to another formalism, which is formal concept analysis, which do exactly the same things, but instead of associating a space, associate a lattice. And the lattice is called the lattice of concept. And the idea is the following. If you have a property, you have also an example of object that satisfy the properties. And if you take the maximal set of objects that satisfy the property, there is a kind of equivalence between a property and a set of objects. And in the reverse, you can take an object and characterize it, but the set of properties that are true for this object. But perhaps several objects satisfy the same properties. So if you are looking the set of objects that are uniquely characterized by a set of properties, you have what is called a formal concept. So the idea of formal concept is very natural when you do learning, and there is a well-developed field that uses formal concept analysis to make clustering, for example. And so my question was the following. Is there a link between formal concept analysis and Q analysis? Because from the same data, a matrix with 0 and 1, you can have a space or a lattice. And this question is very natural because from a complex I can have a lattice, which is the lattice of inclusion of the cells, and from a lattice I can build a complex that has the same relationship. And the answer is the two objects are not the same. I cannot rebuild one from the other one, but there is enough information in the lattice to characterize the homotopy class of the complex. That means I can characterize the same, I can say if they have the same hole or void or things like that. So the two approaches share a lot of in common, and these approaches are very fundamental in learning, in symbolic learning, for instance, and they apply on binary relationships. So what I can grasp with this kind of approach, it's the kind of information you can represent in music by predicate or by binary relationship. And now just my conclusion. Just I want to rephrase perhaps what I have done, and what I have done is that in some sense that when I listen to music, I have some stimulus, and from stimuli, I build some ideas. And my suggestion is that if you are looking only by the co-occurrence of percepts, the natural organization of percept is a space, this space of cellular complex I showed you. So the natural structure of the concept built by the co-occurrence of percept is simply a cellular complex. And that is reminiscent from some idea of Jean Nicot, a philosopher of the beginning of the 20th century. He has done his thesis in philosophy, but he's died very youngly. And the thesis of Jean Nicot was how to reconstruct a geometry from very simple sensation. For example, there is a passage here, which the geometry in the sensed world. And he said, what is the geometry of the sensation if I can only listen to sound. And he want to convince, to show, to argue that in fact the geometry emerge naturally from the co-occurrence of perception. Okay. The second thing my second comment is just to say that I have showed the space in pitch, in chords, but not in time. But obviously, music is an activity in time, and when I have a score, this score is performed, and I can see the performance as a kind of deformation, of shrinking and expanding what is ideally described in the score. And this deformation is in fact, is a complicated one. It's not a continuous one because some duration can be shrinked or expanded, but there are some anchor points that must be preserved. So what remains invariant, and looking for invariance is very natural in space. The order of the note remains invariant, for example, but also second-order qualitative property like going faster or going slower. And we have developed some idea of, for example, for a time-time diagram to relate the time and to understand the topology of the two lines of times that appears. For example, suppose that you have to play 4 notes in this way when the other player play this event. But the constraint, the interpretation constraint is not to play this note exactly, but that the last note must coincide with the last note played by the other musician, for example, in a duet. So when I start, for the first event, this is also the moment I play my first action, A1, and I have an idea of the tempo of the musician. And this idea of the tempo can be used to anticipate the ending point, the point where I have to synchronize with the other player. And so this gives me the flux of time. But when I have and this flux of time gives me the date of the next note I have to play. But then the musician, my partner, which accelerate a little bit, produce a new event. And so this new event gives me a new tempo. And this tempo will just change my idea of the passing of time. And so I have a new kind of passing of time, and so on, until I finish with the synchronization point. And you see that the topology of this passage of time is very complicated because I have some point, and between the point I have continuous flow of time, but this continuous flow of time is changing always. It's piecewise defined. And my last word is that I want to thank you very sincerely, the organizer, because when coming here, I've been a little bit afraid to be urged to decide between two positions. Are the mathematics hidden in music? Are there a kind of skeleton on the music, a flesh of mathematical relationship? With mathematical idea coming from a Platonic event, or is mathematical relationship emerging from some structure from music? And this is an old debate, an old dispute, and I not feel comfortable with this dispute. And in fact, a lot of talk have been shown in this colloquium that we don't have to decide, because we can have in both hands the two questions. For this session, the two questions are: what is the geometry of the music, but also what is the music of the geometry? Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Louis, for the wonderful